This comment section gave me full body chills. Something that happened to you that no one believes. I had a sliding bedroom door and it often slid open in the middle of the night. I just assumed it was the tilt of the apartment and a draft, but I jokingly started blaming a ghost named Hank. After a few weeks, I had this really horrible, vivid nightmare. It was me laying in bed, my room the exact same, but I could feel something was coming in and I couldn't move. Then this shadow figure appeared at the end of my bed, got on all fours, crawled really fast onto my bed to get on top of me, and even though it was darker than dark and had no features, it screamed at me, "My name is not Hank." Then it jumped off the bed and ran out, knocking over my bookshelf. I woke up in a cold sweat for the first and only time in my life, and I was gonna put it down to a weird stress dream until I saw my same bookshelf was knocked over in the same position as my dream. I apologized out loud just in case, and my door stopped sliding open. What? I moved a lot as a kid, and I never had a lot of friends since I was always the new kid. Well, in second grade, I did have a friend. She was really sweet and always made sure to include me. Anyways, I moved again. When I turned 18, I had a nightmare where I was locked in a room with gray walls, and she was there with me. I was 18, but she was still little. We talked for hours before she told me, "I think something's burning." I woke up and had the gut feeling to check my house and discovered my stove was on. Mind you, nobody had used it that day. Since she was on my mind, I tried finding her on social media and discovered that she had died in a house fire a few months after I moved. Nobody believes me when I tell it, but I really believe she came to save me that night. I've been kidnapped 3 times, all 3 years apart from each other, 3 different people in 3 different locations. Nobody believes me because I got away all 3 times. What? Sometimes when I'm in a moment, any moment, I feel like I've already lived that. I'm not talking about deja vu. I mean, I have a clear memory of it happening, but one thing is off, like a cup is a different color or something. I think this is called deja revi or reeve. I don't know, but I've heard of this. My grandpa had stage 4 liver, skin, and bone cancer. During the last few months of his life, I was his primary caregiver, and we spent a lot of time together. In high school, I was on the debate team, and we all had a trip to Washington, D.C. planned for April 2nd through 8th, 2016. I didn't want to go because my grandpa was on hospice at that point, but he kept encouraging me and told me I needed to go and enjoy the experience. On April 6th, my classmates and I were watching a theater performance in D.C. when my phone rang. I looked down and saw my grandpa's name. I immediately got up and hurried out to the lobby to answer. It was his voice, clear as day. He said, "Hi, Meg. I just want to let you know that I'm okay. I love you. See you later." A few moments later, my aunt called me. She told me that my grandpa had passed away about 2 hours before that phone call. I still can't explain what happened. All I know is that I heard my grandpa's voice, and in that moment, it felt like he was calling to say goodbye and let me know that he was okay. I went to Bermuda and snorkeled and explored a crashed car in the water. Starting that night and lasting for months, a dark shadow of a man stood at the end of my bed every night. I finally sat up in my bed and asked, "What do you want?" And in my head, I heard, "Someone to know my name. I'm Jeremy." And I said, "Okay, Jeremy, I know your name." And he disappeared. I was in an abusive relationship and just gave birth at 16. My cat, who also just gave birth, I truly believe was my soulmate. I've never bonded with anyone like that. I was hysterically sobbing, about to take all my meds. I took the cap off and started sobbing harder, which made me hold the bottle lower to the ground. Cootness, yes, that was her name, grabbed the bottle from my hand, ran out of the room, hid it, came back, and didn't leave my side until I fell asleep from exhaustion. It sounds crazy, but it happened. My cat saved my life. Sweet baby. Sometimes when I have a dream, it doesn't matter when, but a few days, months, or even a year later, the same thing will happen in real life, and I remember it, and it's so weird. I have seen a seraphim. Only once when I was little. I thought it was a nightmare for years, but I was very aware and awake. What is a seraphim? Okay, this is the description, and this is like a depiction. I used to be a CNA that specialized with Alzheimer's patients. One of my patients was a super advanced Alzheimer's patient who was essentially nonverbal. Anything she said made 0 sense, and it had been a very long time since she was able to communicate. One day I was taking care of her, and she was just kind of rambling a bunch of nonsense. Then all of a sudden, she stopped, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "Please help me. There's only darkness. There's nothing here." Then just smiled and went back into rambling about nothing. It was the darkest shit I've ever heard, and it still haunts me. She's since passed. Hopefully she found some light. Oh my God. When I was growing up, I'd always hear my mom come back and check on me about 30 minutes after we went to bed. I always heard her footsteps stop at my bed, and I'd pretend to be asleep so she wouldn't take my phone. A few years later, when I got older and told her how scared I get when she came in, she told me she's never come in to check if I'm asleep before. What? My deceased aunt, who died by suicide, stopped my attempt. I saw her, smelled her, heard her, and felt her as she went into my lifeless body and shoved her fingers so far down my fucking throat. World went black. I went back into my body, and I woke up a few hours later with pills regurgitated around me. I am glad you're here. Sitting at dinner with girlfriend's family, including an uncle I had never met before, the woman across from me leaned over and said he likes to hurt people and maintained the most dead serious eye contact I'd ever gotten in my life. A few years later, we got a call that he had killed his wife and her friend and was on the run. The woman I saw at the table was never there. What do you mean she was never there? My dreams predict the future to the point that it's scary. I was under psychiatric treatment for 5 years for having hallucinations of a being that appeared through my window every night and walked around the house. It would always stop by my bed and just stare down on me while I faked being asleep. After my parents decided to take me to an institution because my mind was too far gone, they came over to my place to help me pack my things. Then they stayed one night to take me early in the morning the next day. That night I woke up with my mother's screams and my father rushing over to my room telling me to get out of the house immediately. They canceled the medical intervention and never talked about that night again. My mom just starts crying and hugs me every time I bring it up. My friends and I were exploring an abandoned psychiatric facility near my neighborhood. We got to the children's ward, and that's where it gets weird. I literally kept losing them, even though I didn't split up with them. I would turn around and they'd be in a completely different room. We get to this one area in the children's ward, almost like a clinic, and I completely lose my friends. I'm screaming their names, and I literally couldn't find the stairs that took me downstairs to the first floor. After 15 minutes, I finally got downstairs, and my phone regained service, and my phone started blowing up. I was missing for 3 hours. When I was 9 years old, I had a nightmare that Steve Irwin died by stingray. I woke up screaming and crying and ran to wake up my dad, who tried to assure me it was just a bad dream. 3 days later, it actually happened. It still freaks both of us out 20 years later. My great-grandmother used to live in California. She had this figure she'd see at night who she later named Spooky. Every night, it would stand over her in her sleep, and every night she would be absolutely terrified. She had left several times, but at one point, she lived somewhere else for 3 weeks. One night after she got back, it wasn't standing over her. It was standing down the hallway. It started running towards the door and screaming, "Get out." My grandmother rushed out the door as fast as she could and went to a nearby park where she called her cousin from a telephone pole. That night, a serious earthquake happened, and when my grandmother returned to her house, it had been leveled completely. Spooky saved her. I have mixed emotions about this. I almost ended my life a while back. Then a stranger started appearing in my dreams. I was at my absolute lowest point and came terrifyingly close to going through with it. But right around that time, I started having recurring dreams about a young man I didn't recognize. I didn't know much about my family history, but shortly after, I was digging through an old box of photos at my grandma's house. My heart stopped. Inside was a picture of a man in a military uniform. It was the exact same face from my dreams. It turned out to be my great-grandfather, who died long before I was born. When I showed my mom, she told me he had taken his own life in his 30s. I truly believe he was visiting me to protect me from making the same mistake he did. Wow. I was driving a back road home from college where, I shit you not, I had to stop because a raccoon was crossing the street in a handstand with a hot dog in his mouth. I was so befuddled that I didn't think to take a picture. I believe you. I've experienced quantum immortality. I drove my car into a telephone pole at 50 miles per hour. I died. I woke up. Details of my life are different, but most things are the same. This isn't my original life. Wait, is this like some Everything Everywhere All at Once stuff, or like, what? I worked in a tattoo shop years ago, and one of the artists started talking about how he was basically hearing and seeing things both inside his house and when he got out. It progressively got worse, and he thought he had bugs on him, and everyone thought this man was losing his mind, but I believed him and even offered to come over to confirm for everyone. We were dating, so it wasn't like weird. I went to his house after work. He shows me around his whole house to prove first that no one is there. He turns off all the lights and tells me to follow him into the bathroom. Kind of strange, but whatever. We go inside, he shuts the door, and almost immediately you can hear someone pacing in the hallway. It's heavy and sounds almost like someone has platforms on or some kind of heavy footing. He would swing the door open to catch it and there would be nothing. On top of that, you could hear something scraping the walls from above around to the opposite end of the bathroom, which would lead to the backyard. It was freaky as hell. At that point, just move. When I was younger, I used to constantly dream of the same place. Last year, I got a vid on my FYP talking about Mall World. That's the place from my dreams. Apparently, I'm not the only one who's dreamt of this place, and someone even drew a map of the whole place, and it's identical to my dreams. What do you mean you're not the only one who dreamt it? When I was little, I lived at my grandma's and would always run off into the woods. She didn't care much and would let me stay out all day. I remember running into the woods late in the morning, and I met a little girl by the creek and started playing wizards with her and pretending we had powers. When the sun started setting, I walked back home with the girl following me. When I went back inside my grandma's house, my mom, dad, grandpa, and a bunch of police were there. I found out I had been gone for 2 days. They had sent a police dog into the woods to look for me, and the dogs never picked up anything. When I tried telling my parents about the girl, they said no neighbors around had any children. I like to think that girl guided me out and kept me safe. What did you eat for 2 days? Like, what? My friend texted me that I could come in 20 minutes. I said okay and started playing Roblox. After a long time, I think I'm late, so I start walking to her. When I was there, I knocked on the door. She asked why I was so early. I got confused and checked my phone and saw that it was 1 minute ago since she sent that text. Glitch in the Matrix? I just remember breathing underwater when I was a kid. These are insane.